Welcome back to another episode of the Afro Qi Podcast. Today's conversation is going to be around money. So if you have been looking to connect deeper to your thoughts and feelings about money, you're going to want to stay around and stay connected to this episode, because today our guest will be sharing with us the sacredness of our unique money archetypes. For the last 4 years, our guest has been helping women heal emotional trauma due to sexual abuse, abandonment, and grief. She is a certified radical forgiveness coach, sacred money archetype certified coach, and a yoga teacher. In her work, she helps female entrepreneurs and empaths release emotional blocks, clear financial trauma, and reset their nervous system so they can align with their abundance. To lead us through education and awareness of our money archetypes, I am so excited to welcome the founding owner of Happy Beautiful Goddess, Essence Turner, to the Afro Qi Podcast. Welcome, Essence. How are you?
Hi, I am so good. I'm feeling good. I slept good.
I love good. It. Come on for the good sleep. I was just telling Essence, it's been 2 weeks of me caring for my daughter who has not been feeling well. And now she's finally feeling well. And now I'm congested. So I'm like, oh, I just want some sleep, please. I haven't slept the whole month of October. So I'm happy you're well rested.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So I just want to kind of prep the audience a little bit and let them know how we met each other. You guys know that I've been studying human design. I've been in my experiment for going on 3 years now. And me and my very first human design coach, we were actually in a mastermind together. And that's how we met. And she introduced me to human design. And then she later became one of my human design mentors and coaches. We worked privately together. And then I worked with her within one of her group containers. And that's where I met Essence. And I met Essence in that program, and we kind of been following each other. And then one day, y'all, she came out and she started talking about these money archetypes. And it really caught my attention, number one, because I love archetypes and I just love, you know what, now that I'm saying this out loud, like my brain does really process kind of in like buckets or categories, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that's what I loved about Phoebe's program, because she had the different archetypes. Excuse me, guys, as I come through this congestion here. So Essence started sharing online about the money archetypes, and it caught my attention. So in my line of work with clients, we're often talking about money, our relationship to money, energetics and money, and just how money is energy in all. So Essence, I'm happy that you're here. And I know for many of the people listening, and y'all, I'm going to let her talk because my congestion is taking the best of me. So I'm going to let Essence talk. She's the expert on today's show. But yeah, I know for a lot of people, money archetypes, this is going to be the first time that they even hear this concept or these archetypes being mentioned. So I would really like for us to open up with you just letting people know what are money archetypes and where did they even come from?
Yes. Well, I like to start the conversation with just like talking about archetypes in general. So my favorite definition of archetypes is by Carl Jung, and he says that they are collectively inherited unconscious ideas, patterns of thought, behaviors, and they are universally present in all psyches. So to make that even more clear, I see it as like patterns of thoughts and behaviors that are universally present in all psyches. So that just sums it up. And then even deeper, I see them as personalities. Yeah. And these personalities are coded or like programmed with certain ways of thinking and certain ways of behaving. So let's talk about the rebellious teenager. So if we look at that archetype, this archetype is present in every single human being on earth. And given the right circumstances, this personality then arises from the collective unconscious and then starts like living through the teenager. So the perfect set of circumstances may be like a divorce, or maybe she's getting bullied in school. So then this archetype with this set of behaviors just arises, and she starts living all through that archetype. Some of the coded behaviors might be lying, skipping school, changing the way they dress. So these are archetypes. They're personalities. Again, they live in all of us. And in my program, one of the examples that I give is like the clown archetype. This archetype lives in every one of us. And if I were to volunteer at the rec center and they need me to be a clown on Saturday, I could like breathe deep and like tap into the energy and frequency of the clown, of that archetype, and then be chasing the kids around and having a good time. I might not be able to make balloon animals because that takes skill, but like I can embody that playfulness of the clown archetype. So we can intentionally tap into archetypes, or again, given the right set of circumstances, they can just arise within us and we start acting out those behaviors and patterns of thought. Does that make sense?
No, it does. It does. Thanks for breaking down just in general, like what archetypes are and, you know, what they mean. And specifically to money archetypes, I hear you saying the different environments. First, could you tell us what the archetypes are? And then I have another question after that. But what are the money archetypes? Like, what are they?
So, yeah. So then when we think about money archetypes specifically, they are energetic patterns of thoughts and personalities that arise when dealing with financial matters. So this means like buying, spending, paying bills, grocery shopping, work, career, business, right? Like literally all day, every day, we are interacting with these archetypes because we're interacting with money at the grocery store or when it's time to pay a bill. So there are 8 money archetypes, and given our set of circumstances, so maybe how you were raised depends on which of the 8 archetypes are going to be the most alive in you. So I will say that we have all 8 in us, just like we have all the archetypes in the world in us, but these 8 around money, they live within us. But what your background, your history is going to depend. That is what shapes which archetypes are going to be your top and primary and most dominant. Okay. So
when I'm hearing the archetypes, I'm thinking, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm almost hearing like nature versus nurture. So it's not, we aren't born with a set of, it sounds like we're born with all archetypes, but I guess the archetype that shows up more lively in our lives isn't something that we're born with. It's more environmental, how we were raised, values around money, our upbringing, those factors determine what archetypes stick out in our lives the most. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. But then it could be, like what we're born into, because like if you think about the soul's journey and like, the thought that we choose what we are going to experience in this life, then but
to
not get
definitely.
so esoterical.
Yes. No, I'm with you.
So for instance, so like I would love, so what I did for you specifically, because I know you're a healer, is I wrote up a brief synopsis of each archetype, but I also included like their shadow behavior and then like what it's like if they're living in their potential.
Okay, let's hear them for the 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the accumulator. This is my number 1 archetype, and the accumulator it has a nickname. Each one has a nickname, and it's called your inner banker. your inner banker, and they have an emotional connection to money. They get great joy and happiness around saving, and they're naturally good at money management. But when they're living in their shadow, they can feel anxious and worried about spending the smallest amount of money, and people know them as being frugal. When they're living in their potential, they're creating financial independence, being financially responsible, and they feel at ease around spending. Then you have the alchemist. This is your inner idealist. I call it the ideas guy, like in movies where they have the marketing team. They're like, this is Tom. He's our ideas guy. They're never short on ideas because they see the possibility, and they love attracting money in alternative or unusual ways. And when they're living in their shadow, they have a love-hate relationship with money, and they can care more about leading a movement and creating change than making money. It's like the money is not as important as the movement, instead of them both having equal value. And when they're living in their potential, they turn their ideas into money, meaning they create the course or the product or start the business. They see the value in the idea and they bring it to life. Then you have the maverick. This is your inner rebel with a cause. And they are very creative when it comes to generating money. They are rebellious and like to march to the beat of their own drum. And they like to take risks. But when they're living in their shadow, they can get into get rich quick schemes, and balance and rules are like a bit boring for them. So they may experience financial highs and lows versus stability because they kind of like to live on the edge. And then you have the celebrity. This is your inner big shot. And they are magnetic and charismatic. They love being seen, and they will use their purchases to do so. And they love entertaining and having 5-star experiences. But when they're living in their shadow, they may use their purchases to cover up feeling insecure, which may mean spending more than they actually have, or like putting on this mask of perfection and never showing their true selves or allowing themselves to be vulnerable. But when they're living in their potential, they stand out, they spend from an empowered place, they exude powerful leadership, and people are drawn to them. Then we are at number 5. We have the ruler. This is your inner empire builder. I see this as like your inner CEO. And they have a deep desire to create an empire where everyone thrives. But when they're living in their shadow, they can continuously move from goal to goal, or even like move their target. Like, oh, I want to make this much money. And then they do. And then they're like, no, now I want this. It's like never enough, they never have enough money, never do enough, haven't worked long enough. So these are the types that can like burn out. And when they're living in their potential, though, they're visionaries. They create things of lasting value, and they make big impact and big income. Then you have the connector. This is your inner relationship creator. And their connection to others helps them create relationships that can generate income. They value heart-to-heart connections, and they aren't overly stressed about money. They're pretty at ease about it. When they're living in their shadow, they may seem to have ease around money, but deep down they feel insecure about their ability to make money, and want others to take care of the money details for them. And they may not charge or bill appropriately for their services, especially if like they see this person as being a friend or a close connection.
Which one is that one? Which archetype is that?
The connector.
Okay.
And when they're living in their potential, they educate themselves about money. They look at their money. They see the value that they bring and charge appropriately, and they lean into their gifts of connection. where we at? Number 7. This is the romantic. And it's called your inner hedonist. But I like to call it your inner pleasurist, or like the self-care queen. She loves beauty and the finer things. And just to give you a little example is, let's say like the romantic was going to a Christmas party at work and they had to like wear one of the ugly Christmas sweaters. The accumulator would probably buy the most cost-effective cheap one because they're like, oh, I'm only gonna wear it this one time. But the romantic may spend extra money because she's like, oh, this one, I love the fabric, I love the way it feels on my skin. So it's not about the price, it's about the texture and the quality. And they will spend to get, the best of the best. But when she's living in her shadow, she may overspend or go over budget because she has this emptiness inside. And sometimes she'll use the spending and buying things for herself to cover up her loneliness or her emptiness. But when living in the potential, she finds meaning and fulfillment and, enjoys her money and purchases from a place of wholeness. And then we have the nurturer, which is called your inner sponsor, and they love being of service and helping people. I also see this as kind of like the caretaker or the mother archetype. And this love for helping other people inspires them to share their money, their time, and other resources. They are very loyal and generous. But when they're living in their shadow, they rescue and give to the point of enabling others. And they are good with money, but they can get into debt from helping other people. But when they're living in their potential, they're generous, but know when to say no and implement boundaries. And they can hold others as powerful instead of rescuing them. And
wow. Essence. Oh my gosh. If you guys listening are anything like me, y'all were taking notes while she was talking. That was so powerful. So what stood out for me, and I love how you said in the beginning that we have all of them. And I feel like as you was talking, I could relate to every single one. Like, oh my gosh, yes. There were 3 that definitely stood out to me. And that is the accumulator, the connector, and the romantic. Like those were the 3 that stood out the most to me, especially the accumulator, like the frugal, saving, definitely love to look in the bank and see money there, like that holding on to. It's like, oh. Definitely the connector. What stood out for me in the connector, when you said that shadow of not being into the details, I noticed that is a shadow for me. Like when it becomes overwhelming, like I don't even want to look at it. I almost just avoid it. So that was interesting. And also the part around pricing and value. And that brought me back to when the pandemic first hit in 2020. I mean, life for everyone was difficult. And our mental health practice had to incur a lot of costs and a lot of fees just with going virtual and getting things HIPAA compliant. And our software went up and everything went up. And while all the other mental health practices around us increased their fees, some even dropped insurance and just went all cash pay, here was my mental health practice for 2 years, a whole full 2 years of the pandemic. We did not go up. And as a business owner and CEO, I bit the bullet for that. So that almost reminds me of that one that she was like trying to take care of people, and then because of it, they end up in debt. Yeah, so that's what, like all of them, right? But just that connector piece, like, just and then even with the friends part, like, like not wanting to charge certain people. I think not that my clients are my friends, but I feel like we're community, and it's like, dang, the world is in such shambles. I'll feel so bad to go up on our fees, even though all the things that we're using to service you with high quality have gone up. I don't want to put that cost on you. So I'll just bite it, you know? And it's like, man, and then think about the romantic. Just my love for luxury, experiences. Like, and my husband knows, like, I don't need to have a luxury shoe. I don't need to have a luxury bag, but I love luxury experiences, luxury travel, luxury dining. Like, I just love the goodness. And that's what I'm willing to spend my money on. Like, when it comes to luxury experiences, I don't care what it costs. Like, I will buy that thing if it's luxury. Like, not a shoe, not a bag, but just an experience.
So then here's my question, because I often wonder, okay, so we don't know for sure, but you have a pretty good idea of which ones stand out. But how does your accumulator deal with your romantic, like spending the money on these like luxurious experiences?
You want me to tell you that? I feel like I have floated more into the luxury. And I think having the balance of the accumulator and the romantic allows me to not go in debt. So when the romantic is like, girl, you should go to Bali and blah, 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 blah. The accumulator is like, yeah, so we're going and we're going to have a luxury experience, but here's the budget.
Yeah.
You know?
I love it.
So that's how it shows up. But I feel like the romantic side has been of recent. That accumulator was really, 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 really big. And I think for me, I had to float into my worth. Like, yo, you work hard as hell. You take care of a lot of people. Go on that trip and ball out. You deserve it. How many people do you support financially? Even if you're not giving people money, the fact that you went 2 years in the pandemic and bit that bullet and did not go up on the fees for 24 months, that is you financially helping somebody. You didn't go around to the hundreds of clients that your practice served and gave everybody a stimulus check. But in retrospect, you saved them, you know? So as a CEO of a mental health company, you deserve it, Kiara. Like, go somewhere out nice to eat for dinner. So what, the bill is going to be $300. Order that wine. Order the dessert at the end. Like, you deserve this luxury experience with the waiters, with the napkins over their arm, coming. Oh, like, you deserve that. You work hard. So I think my accumulator and my romantic, they're often having conversations with each other.
Nice.
They're often doing that because that connector can get out of hand. And when that connector get out of hand, romantic is like, but wait, we got some luxury. And then before I spend all the money, the accumulator is like, yes, I agree. You should do that thing. But here is the So I feel like they're both like constantly having a dance with each other. I'm curious to know, where did these money archetypes come from? Like, did someone discover them? Like, who coined these? Like, what principle of thought do they come from?
So I took the course through, her name is Kendall Summerhawk, and she never says like where this comes from, but she's been teaching this work for probably like 20 years. And she also does brand archetyping as well. But yeah, so
I wonder if they're kind of like her own archetypes, kind of like how Phoebe kind of used human design to pull forth the archetype. So maybe it was like an intuitive download.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it is, she was onto something. She was onto something before. So I'm curious to know, how did you discover the money archetypes? How did you discover them?
So back in 2017, my mentor, my radical forgiveness mentor, Colin, he signed up for the money archetype course, and I had joined the Radical Forgiveness Institute, and I was working for him. And one day I came to work and I saw this archetype stuff on the desk. And I'm like, oh, can I take the quiz? And so when I took the quiz and then my accumulator came out on top, it like really explained a lot for me. And I was like really in this place of feeling like trying to work hard to get my money right and feeling very like that scarcity mindset. And I was able to see that I was like living in the shadow. But he ended up getting sick and with cancer, and he passed away. And I never got to go deeper into the understanding the sacred money archetype. So it kind of just like fell away, you know, from my awareness. And then in 2020, I was feeling stuck in my trauma healing business, and a psychic told me that I was supposed to be like helping people with heal money blocks. And she's like, you're supposed to sign up with this. She's like, this white lady, this course, and it's kind of pricey, but you're supposed to do it. And instantly I knew she was talking about Kendall Summerhawk, because I'm just feeling like that's just too much of a coincidence. My mentor, you know, signed, and now here she is, and he never got to bridge like the radical for like the healing and the money archetype. So I feel like, okay, maybe this is my work to do, is to blend the two together. So I signed up, and so that's how I got back into the money archetype world.
I love it. And how did you begin to use them once you got kind of reintroduced back into the work?
Well, to be quite honest, I was still in and out of awareness for a while. I was mainly like focused on helping my clients and like just kind of like, I get to me, you know, later. And now this year is that later where I can still see some shadow, you know, in my relationship with money. And I'm like, let me really look at this for myself. And I'm like, this accumulator is really out of hand, like living in the shadow, this scarcity. And one thing about the accumulator is like things that are like people look as like everyday purchases can be really hard. And what I mean everyday, like going to get your eyebrows done, going to get your nails done. The accumulator doesn't want to spend money. It doesn't make sense to them. But like when you think about what you said about like that deservingness and, you know, like self-value, it's like, no, I can spend money on these things like self-care and being kind to myself and like being aware of when I go to do these things, to do them from a place of abundance. Like I have $8 to get my eyebrows done. You know what I mean? Like give this lady the credit card with a smile on your face versus, you know, like, you know, the pool, like she's trying to take it. So when you think about this energetically, when you're living in the shadow, it's repelling money. So because it's one thing to be, let's say, frugal when you're just conscious of your spending, right? Yep. And you're only spending on what you value or deem important. Like that's different. But when you're being frugal out of fear and scarcity, that's a whole nother energetic vibe that then repels money. So by me really understanding the accumulator as being my top and most dominant archetype, it allows me to be more awake and aware of my spending patterns or what's going through my mind when I go to pay the bills online or to make sure the money's in the account for the ones that are coming out on auto debit. So I'm like now really practicing being aware of what am I thinking? What am I feeling while I'm doing these things? So I'm not in that continuous cycle of putting out a negative vibe around spending money.
You know, hearing you say that is having me think about like money mindset even. And I'm curious to know, when you're working with your clients and when you help them discover their archetypes, what does the work look like around then, I guess, like their mindset or even helping them work through the shadow side of the archetype?
Yeah. So some of the shadow, you know, that like, so that could be where, let's say, like the radical forgiveness or energy healing works comes in. So let's, for instance, one client, she's a connector and then a celebrity. So this connector, like think of it as like this soft, gentle soul that just wants to help people. And then there's the celebrity that wants to be seen. But she wasn't allowing herself to be seen. She basically like dressed and showed up in a way of like blending in and not drawing too much attention. So the deeper work, there was some sexual trauma that was there. There was the being different in her family. Like she liked to read, let's say, like Harry Potter novels. In her family, they were like athletes. So they made her feel like a nerd or a geek. So it was just better to like not stand out. So then we had to do that deeper work of healing the sexual trauma, because that made her want to hide. It's okay to be different from your family or different from whoever and be unique. So we had to do that deeper work so then she could show up in her celebrityness. She dyed her hair pink. She went online and like went shopping and bought her like printed clothing, louder makeup and bigger earrings and necklaces to really start owning that celebrity part and showing up in that way.
That is so interesting. What I'm hearing is that how your childhood and even traumas can affect and dictate what archetypes show up. And when you're given that example of your client, what I'm hearing also is that she sounds like, and I'm saying this because I can relate, like she sounds like one of those people that kind of dims her light a bit because she doesn't want other people to judge her. Like, because I'm sure now with the pink hair and the this and that, it's like well, who do you think you are, Miss Big Stuff? Like, right? So it's almost like those people that kind of humble themselves because they don't want people to even know that they're really all that. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
And so she was hiding. So for instance, celebrity is very low on mine. So I like don't have this desire to like really stand out and use my purchases to stand out, but she does. But she was denying that part of her because of the fear of judgment. And so like this is the part of her that wants to shine, but she couldn't give herself permission to shine because of the things that happened to herself in the past.
That makes a lot of sense. Oh my goodness. So I'm curious to know how women, or how even Black women specifically, like what would be the benefit of them knowing their money archetypes? Because I know it's listeners right now that are like, this sounds amazing. Like, what's the transformation on the other end of this? Like, what is the benefit? Why do I, as a Black woman, need to know my money archetypes? Why do I need to tap into this energy?
Well, I feel like our knowing our archetypes, because of our history and culture, can really keep us living in the shadow side of the archetype. And not knowing that can keep you in a perpetual pattern where you're like, why aren't things changing? Why isn't my money situation changing? And sometimes it's because we're living in the shadow, and it, like, one, we're not aware of it, or two, we make excuses for it and keep living it out. So for instance, the nurturer. So us as Black people, we are really, we're loyal to family, right? And what, if your brother needs something, your mother needs something, like we're taught to like give and over give, even especially as women with the over giving, right? And putting other people before you. So if you're not aware that you are giving to the point of you're causing yourself financial stress, you may just keep on giving, putting yourself into debt, not upholding boundaries, because it's like, but my sister needs this. And you're not realizing that you're actually enabling your sister. You're crippling her instead of empowering her by continuously giving to her. And then even think about the kids, of what you're modeling then by putting other people before you, and you putting yourself into debt to help other people. Now you're perpetuating this legacy where now your daughter may be this with her sister or whoever. And I feel like this is something that I've seen in clients and just in people, my people in general. Like my partner, he's a nurturer, and I see this with him and his siblings. He's the one they always call, and even if things aren't like, maybe an unexpected bill came up for him and this ain't a good month to loan money, he still will, but it stressed him out, you know what I'm saying, to the point where he can't sleep, instead of just telling them no and like learning to be okay with that. So I feel like that's one thing, that one archetype we really struggle with. Another is the accumulator. So for me, growing up in a household where the constant phrase was, I don't have any money. So now, me being raised in that just makes the shadow side of my archetype that much stronger, because it believes in scarcity, like there's never enough, you know what I mean? And so whereas another accumulator may not have that, but you know, I grew up in the 80s, and there weren't a whole as many opportunities for women and women of color. I was raised by a single woman, and so money was tight. And so this accumulator part of me is still living in that past, and I have to keep reminding it, no, it's okay. There's so many opportunities for you now. You're not living the same life that your mom lived. You know, there's more opportunities to make money. Another is the ruler. Like a lot of us Black women, Black people are taught or saw our people working hard for money. Right? So so what I've seen in clients and myself, because ruler is my number 2, is, let's say the work is easy. Like you get a client, or you get a client, something is so much easier than what you thought it was going to be. Now you go making up work. Oh, maybe I could add this, or maybe I should do this for them. It's like, no, you're done.
Yes.
But there's that story that you got to work harder. You got to keep going. And that drives us to burn out. And maybe it was true. Like back in the day, people did have to work hard for money, but like, we don't necessarily live in that reality anymore. And especially if we can remind ourselves of that, like that doesn't have to be my reality. That might have been my grandparents' reality. It doesn't have to be mine. But when you're unaware of that, you can continue to perpetuate that and then burn out.
I think I might have a little bit of that one too.
And there's one more. This episode of it reminds me of, I think it was either Blackish or Black AF, which, you know, they're by the same writer. But so the celebrity, your inner big shot, and there was an episode where he talked about peacocking. And so basically like how peacocks basically they you know, fan out when they're showing off to strut their stuff. Yes. And so like basically back in the day, back in slavery, the slave owners would dress their slaves up in nice clothes for church. Or, you know, like that's when you got to look good. And so like this built in our mentality, and then you got to show off, you know, you're showing off to the other, let's say like the other, what are plantations, like, look how well my owner dresses me. And it's like this whole competition mentality that was born way back in the day, that then we still, so many of our people uphold. They need the designer bags, they need the cars, they all, you know, need to show off. And they can do it to the point of like, you really don't even have the money for this $700 BMW car note, but there's just something in you that got to do it. And now you're creating more financial stress and strain. Now you got to work overtime to pay or get a loan. So there's nothing wrong with being and living in a celebrity, but it's like when you're doing it from the shadow of like trying to be seen or perpetuate an image that's not really the truth.
You know what I hear? Trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Keep up with the Joneses. Exactly.
But who are the Joneses though? Like, no, but seriously, are the Joneses, like, is it the plantation owners? Like, are those the Joneses? Now you're going to have me doing some research about the Joneses. But no, that's what I hear. Keeping up with the Joneses and living outside of your means for the sake of looking a certain way. And I even think of now, I think of when I used to do case management work. This was like this is the work that introduced me to like the mental health field. When I was right out of college, I was doing community-based case service work. And I would be in a very low income area, you know, serving clients, but they would have very expensive items, you know, from Jordans to PlayStations to these things. But here I am coming to, you know, drop off groceries from the food bank, you know, but I'm sure, you know, as a parent, you want your kids to keep up, you know, you want them to have the latest game system. You want them to have you don't want them to go to school and be the kid without. So you're almost kind of building that celebrity archetype up in your child, you know, up for your child to, I'm sure, carry out in adulthood, you know? So that's so interesting. Wow. Okay. This is so powerful. So I want everybody to know, like, how can they connect with you and what does your work look like for them to enter in with working with you around their money archetypes? First, how can they get connected with you? And second, what is that work going to look like?
Okay. So for those of you who may, you know, be curious to know what your archetypes are, they can take the quiz. I have a Sacred Money Archetypes mini course, and you can access the Sacred Money Archetype quiz and the first module of the course for free. So you can get that at essenceturner.com/sacred money quiz and find out your archetype. So that's the first step in the journey, is finding out what your 8 archetypes are, and then looking at them in order of score. And really, we like to focus on the top 3. But again, as you could tell, you have all 8 of them active in you. And so then the next question is, so you can then get a reading. You can, 2 ways. You can do the Sacred Money Archetypes mini course and find out your archetypes, or you can do a reading and I'll take you through the assessment myself, or you can come knowing. And then what we do is we will look at your top 3 archetypes to see where you might be living in the shadow. And then we'll talk about getting your top 3 to work in a cohesive manner to heal your relationship with money and to attract or create more money. And so that we can do that on a reading, and then you'll leave with your own plan. Or I have a 9-week, which I call Soulful Sacred Abundance, where we're doing the money archetype work, as well as we're clearing and healing any blocks and any trauma. And it's really working on your money mindset.
I love it. So that link that she mentioned, you guys can definitely find that in the show notes. So make sure that before you click out of this episode that you do visit the show notes so that you can connect with Essence, take the money archetype quiz, find out your top 3. When this episode goes live, share in the comments what your top 3 archetypes are. I'm curious to know. I'm going to take the quiz just to kind of see if what I thought my archetypes are my archetypes, or at least my top 3, because I can definitely relate to them all. So, Essence, I want to thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your expertise. I know they are going to tremendously benefit from this conversation. And I hope that everyone does check out the quiz. And I think that was a good first step, just for, you know, them to have a level of awareness and then really connect to deep dive. So thank you so much for this.
It was my pleasure. I've been smiling this whole time. I love this work. I love talking about it, facilitating it. So thank you for the invitation.